Half of the people at Mashable I spoke to had heard of you and loved your work.
And the other half have heard of us and hate us.
You're very podcast famous, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. That's how I explain it to my in-laws too. We're more like we got our hands on a CB radio and we're just kind of like yelling into the ether side of it. Yeah, that's us.
Yeah, once the real celebrities got into the game, we had to create another tier for us to hide out in.
That's a nice way to put it. I was going to say kind of like we're Balloon Boy famous.
That is actually the best so far. We aspire to be Balloon Boy famous. People are going to talk about Balloon Boy in a way that they will not talk about us in 50 years. Like, we're hot right now, but Balloon Boy's got longevity.
Okay, so for those who don't know, for the Mashable audience doesn't know, you are the creators and stars of the hugely popular My Brother and Me podcast, The Adventure Zone, Sawbone, Schmanners, way too many other podcasts to name. You have far more energy to creating podcasts than I could ever imagine happening.
We have more energy for creating podcasts than people have for listening to podcasts. It's fortunate.
No, I mean, that energy just comes from our long familial relationship. Like, we're all excited about the same stuff. And you know, it makes sense that we get excited about that stuff kind of in the same way. And, you know, Juice and I worked in, games journalism. We were working in online media for a very long time. And so that kind of self-startiness. And Travis has just always been the kind of like, I have a movie idea, and then I have another movie idea, and I want you to hear all of them. Like, Travis has always been very, very enthusiastic about his ideas. Like, it's just like everything in our career trajectory, and you know, the way that we think about cool stuff that we like, it all sort of leads into this very specific kind of drive that we have.
Like our dad, you know, a radio DJ for 30 plus years and a comedy one at that. And so like we, you know, grew up kind of doing bits with him sometimes on the radio and listening to comedy stuff. And we watched a lot of like, you know, McElroy Brothers and Mel Brooks and, you know, stand-up comedy and Mystery Science Theater 3000. And
there was a dash of Python. Dad, honestly, Dad always showed us some Monty Python, like the hits, like the Pet Shop, This Is an X Bird. Like, that's like the only one I really remember. That one never really stuck with us. But for me, Kids in the Hall was always like the biggest.
It's kind of intimidating to jump in to this massive body of work that you guys have created, especially with the sheer number of inside jokes.
You know what I'd say? I think we have an inside aesthetic.
Yeah,
we're inside kids, and we're inside kids, and we have an inside aesthetic. Where I think once you get the vibe of what we do, there's not really that much, you know, ephemera you have to remember. You know, we always wanted to, especially as our catalog drew on and on, we wanted to avoid becoming like just referencing stuff that we'd said before as a way to like, you know, garner laughs. We want it to be something that like makes sense in the moment.
Yeah, I think the pitfall, like if you can call it that we fall into, is there's just like certain topics that we find especially interesting, so we like tend to talk about them over, and like there's like pop culture stuff that like we will keep referencing forever. And I don't know that it's an in joke so much as it's just like we find the idea of like a boy who eats spicy food and turns into a car. We find that so funny, we will reference it over and over and over again.
The more obscure, the better. I'm just trying to make the two of them laugh. That is all I've been doing for 10 years, for 500 episodes. For, you know, that's the show. It's like, can I make them laugh? And it's whatever gets a laugh out of them.
I go for laughs, but also groans. I'm happy with groans too. That's mostly my jokes. It's how terrible. That's it. You said Griffin ends up kind of playing the straight man sometimes. I think that's true, but I think it's only because, and I don't know why this is, but Justin and I both seem to get a lot of joy from when Griffin gets angry. It's just really funny. There's something about Griffin. Really? Oh, really? And it's so angry.
And that's brother stuff, though. That's him growing up as the baby and always getting preferential treatment, and so we have to bully him sometimes.
So funny.
I feel like if I have a role, it is the more often than not the one that thinks about the fact that our audience is spending their human life hours listening to our program, and so maybe like we shouldn't talk about you know, obscure early 80s animated series where a boy turns into a car every time he eats spicy food. Like, that's, who is this? I feel like my role is the who is this for really guy. We genuinely try to keep a pretty like positive and welcoming vibe in everything that we do, regardless of what that is. And then also we do a lot of stuff. So if you enjoy my brother and me, like there's a huge crossover there for you with Adventure Zone, because like it's still us and we're, you know, playing D&D and telling a story, but like our sensibilities don't change from show to show.
So it's started very simply, which is kind of what you advise doing in the book with podcasts, right? Just get started, just hit record. And in fact, you tell people not to go back and listen to those early episodes. And start somewhere in the 200 range, I think.
Even now,
yeah.
It's pushing forward. Now it's 250.
Yeah.
Real listeners don't start till 251.
Yeah, that's good. That works too. I would just sort of throw a dart somewhere in the mid 300s and just see what comes of it.
Guys, I could talk to you all day, and I would be respectful of your time. When is the book coming out again?
January
26th.
This book came together pretty quickly once we actually started to write it. We mainly did it to save time at future Q&As. No, I think it really sank in that this would be a valuable thing. We did a short-lived but beautiful convention called PodCon 2 years in a row, and during that we would sort of, along with a bunch of other incredibly talented, far more talented podcasters, I would argue, did like these very sort of brass tacks seminars where we realized like, hey, this is something that we, we short sell ourselves a lot. We are frequent consumers of humble pie, but like we have been doing this for 10 years, and there's a great deal of sort of endemic knowledge between us that we thought we would be able to write a book about kind of authoritatively. So that's what we try to do.
Don't you love when the interviewer is like, well, I don't want to take up any more of your time, and the interview subject's like, wait the on, hold on, I got 10 more things to say about
There's
podcasts.
more things about us. We haven't told you all the cool things we know.